So let's get started with our patchwork pot holder. Now for this you're going to be using one of the pieces of fabric that you made in the Easy Patchwork tutorial. You can see I've got mine here. And your interfacing and the back. So I'm going to use one of these as a template, and I'm going to pick a nice piece of my patchwork that I want to be showing on the pot holder, and I think I'm going to probably use this here. I'll just put a couple of pins in and cut right around it. I keep hitting the seams at the back, that's all. There we go. Okay, so I think that's going to be a really nice piece for the front. So now we're going to just sandwich together the three pieces, back, middle, front, like that. And again, we're going to pin it together. Okay, so first of all I'm going to sew just in a straight stitch around the edge, about 1/4 of an inch in, before we attach our binding. Okay, so you can see there's just a row of stitching just to hold this all together. So next we're going to put the binding on, and I'm using a double fold bias binding, which you can buy in any fabric store. So, and there are a couple of ways of attaching this. You can do it by machine, or we're actually going to sew it on by hand. So we are going to just start like this, and it will cover that the last row of stitching that you did. Just trim those threads. The other thing that you can do is make your own bias binding or bias tape. But you just have to remember to do it on the bias of the fabric at an angle. And that means that it actually goes around, like this bend, it actually just goes nicely around it. And I just check on the back every now and then just to make sure the pin is going through the back of the bias binding too. I'm going to undo the first pin, and I'm just going to fold a little edge over on there on the end. I'm just going to press it with my fingers, and that will give us a nice clean finish at the end. Okay, so I'm not going to put another pin in there, but as we sew around it we can make sure that we catch everything. So you see there's the back and there's the front. So now we're going to, by hand, stitch this on. Again, you could do it by machine if you wanted to, but I like to have the combination of machine stitching and hand stitching. So for the edge I'm going to use this bright blue. I want my stitching to show. Just going to tie a knot in the end. And I'm going to come up from underneath the bias binding just so that my knot is hidden underneath. And I am going to just do a little straight stitch. Like that. And you just need to make sure on each stitch, which is, a little bit time consuming, but that you want to make sure that the needle is going through both sides of the bias tape. You don't want it to come through on the underneath, on the fabric. So just along the edge. And it's very therapeutic. This is something that you could do, when you've got a spare few minutes, maybe when you're, if you're on the train, or if you're waiting to pick up the kids, or in front of the TV during the commercial breaks. It's nice to have something to do with your hands. Take that pin out. On these embroidery threads that I'm using, they're the 6-strand ones, and I like to divide them up into 3 strands, as in, 2 groups of 3. If you use it with the 6 strands, it's thick and difficult to use, and you just don't need it. So most sewing projects, I divide it up into 3. Okay, I've reached the end. So I am just going to, again, I'm going to go underneath and just finish off with a couple of little stitches, tiny stitches in there. 1, 2, 3 should do it. And that's like doing a knot. Okay, so that bit's looking really nice. And now we're going to do a little bit of embellishment on the inside along these lines. Again, you can leave it like this, you can do whatever you like. You can do inside some of the boxes or some lines down the seams. So I have some pink thread here. I'm Just going to put it on my nice thinner needle. And for this, because I really don't want the knot to show, I'm going to just start at an edge and do a couple of little stitches, like securing stitches. Mine keeps coming through. I tried to go too close to the end. Okay, that should do it. 1, 2, 3. Okay, so now what I'm going to do is some little stitches along here. I'm following the lines. But again, you can do anything you want to. You could do an initial on one of the squares. Or a decorative embroidery stitch. Sometimes I just like the simplicity of a plain old straight stitch. Okay, so I did that one, and you can see it's starting to look nice on the other side too. Okay, so you can see how you could, you know, go backwards and forwards and do all sorts of interesting stitches, but I think I'm happy with this for now. And the last thing I'm going to do is put a little holder on it with a ribbon. So we're going to take the piece of ribbon, and I'm just going to turn over the ends a little, twice, like that, and I'm going to pin it on actually where the seam is on the bias tape, just to contain all of our you know, finishing off bits. And I'm going to fold the other end in twice and pop over that one there. I'm going to pin in place, and then I'm going to use the blue thread that I used before just for continuation. And I'm going to start off with the 3 stitches. 1. Just take that pin out, my thread's getting caught around it. 1, 2, 3. And that one. And just going to push it through. Making sure that you catch the other side too. And when I get to the end, again, 3 stitches on top of each other to secure the thread. And I'm going to cut that. Oops. And now you have a little hook for hanging it in your kitchen. So that's the easy patchwork pot holder.